The goal is to make North Carolina the most culturally competent state in the United States, because investment here is important. Breaking the glass ceiling for women was an awesome accomplishment. I'm actually, when they do Women's History Month, I'm noted at the History Museum, those kinds of things. But I felt the weight of a lot of women on my shoulders that were hoping that I would open doors for them. Country girl from Maryland, and I'm sitting here talking to a leader of an ethnic community in North Carolina that we value very much. And I knew I had to get the ox out of the ditch, which is an old saying. I didn't make any public speeches for the first 2 years, really, because I couldn't answer the question, when's the problem going to be fixed? You know, we were months, over 113 days behind filing bank loan papers, which are very simple to file. There is an occupation called farmer's wife, which, you know, my mother was. And so she kept me in line in my growing up years as best she could, about not feeling too big about anything at all, and tried to keep me grounded. And I think of her often and hope that I've fulfilled what she would want for me, and I know I have, so.
Absolutely. If you were on the opposite side of this conversation, meaning that you were asking a question, what would be the ultimate question you'd ask to the Secretary of State, Ellen Marshall? Hello and welcome to Smart DZ Presents Keep Talking with Ananta, a podcast that has been running for more than 1.5 years. Today, I have an extreme pleasure to be in a conversation with someone, an extraordinary individual with a diverse range of experiences and accomplishments, recipient of many acknowledgments, recognitions, and prizes. Ladies and gentlemen, let me have the honor to present to you the Secretary of State in the state of North Carolina, Ellen Marshall. Madam Secretary, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for this invitation and this opportunity. I very much appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I have enjoyed my association with the Nepalese community, and this is another experience to round that out.
Thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. Let's begin with something that has been published in and is available in a public domain about you, and I have pulled that up in my laptop here. It says, one of the article on facts.net says many things about your positiveness, your achievements and things like that. But what particularly grabbed my attention is one of the paragraph on the conclusion of it. It says, her unwavering commitment to public service and her tireless efforts to protect the interests of the people of North Carolina have earned her widespread recognition and respect. As a trailblazer, Marshall has shattered numerous glass ceilings and has paved the way for future generations of women leaders. What a nicely written paragraph.
And that just warms me, sitting here listening to you read that. I do believe I've been a trailblazer. I do know that I have opened doors for other women. My background is as a home economist, and I was married and facing a divorce situation, and I knew I needed to change myself in order to cope, to go forward, to satisfy myself, it was to achieve goals that weren't even goals at that time. The only goal was to get myself a better education and be able to do something different. I had been teaching school. I had been a small business owner. I continued being a small business owner after law school, but the change to go to law school 10 years after undergraduate school was a true jump pivot for me. Law school was very challenging for me. Unfortunately, I did not perform to my best ability in college. I played too much. I enjoyed extracurricular activities, which were fun for me to do, but I was not disciplined enough to actually get the best education that I paid for or my parents paid for. So law school was a time for me to get sober, really, not that I was drunk, but to get real about being a student, because I knew this was a great opportunity for me to be able to change my life. And it did. The practice of law helped me understand clearly that not everyone was raised the same way that I was raised, that not everyone had the same values and views that I had. Let me go back a little bit. I was raised on a family farm in Maryland, not in the state of North Carolina. Good people. My parents were great people. I was very active in 4-H, and school teachers and my 4-H leaders saw something in me to prod me, to motivate me to go to college, and to have my parents agree that I could go to college, because there were some bright people in our community whose parents said, no, you need to come work on the farm. You don't get more education. You had enough.
And it was back in
This would have been in the 60s.
1960s.
In the 60s, okay. Yeah. Our little community area was very insular. My parents, fine people, but they did not know much about the world more than 20, 25 miles from our home.
Wow.
They had no idea what world was out there and what opportunities would be available for me or other young people. So with 4-H and teachers encouraging me, I went to one of the largest universities in the country, I think even in the world, which was a real change from my high school graduating class of, I think, 107 of us. But I went to the University of Maryland, and the reason it's the largest in the world is because they have branches in Tokyo and Munich, Germany, where a lot of Americans, especially military-connected Americans, get their further education. So Maryland has always done a lot of tremendous outreach for students. So I graduated and came to North Carolina right after college. In that time...
What was the year you came into North Carolina?
1967.
1967. From 1967 to 1996, when you showed to the world and how it's like, what can be achieved through your statewide election win, how was the transition looks like? I know you are going to talk about that, but I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yes. So, well, let me add one thing, a little bit from my background. The 4-H program afforded me an opportunity to live in Brazil for 7 months on an exchange program. At that point, my worldview changed dramatically from the little area that I came from. And I, for the first time in my life, realized what it was like to be a minority of one, not even a group of minority, but a minority of one in a place who didn't really speak the language very well, even though I went to language school. What happened is, my first half time in Brazil, I lived with Japanese families. I didn't study any Japanese, I studied Portuguese. But my assignment, there are a lot of Japanese in the metropolitan São Paulo area, and I stayed with Japanese farmers. Then the second half of my time, I stayed in the state of Pernambuco, which is Recife, and it's on into the Amazon. So those are two very different types of areas. And so I really didn't get to practice Portuguese until my second part there. Now, unfortunately, I was in the rural area where their grammar wasn't very good. And I didn't know it was embarrassing, but it was an embarrassing thing when I finished. I had to give my final report in Portuguese to the administration of the 4-H type organization there. And my host mother from Rio, I stayed with the families all the time, just sat there like this. And I couldn't understand what the problem was. Did she have a headache? When we left, she told me, please don't speak any more Portuguese.
Oh my goodness.
She said, you learned the worst of the language and everything. So, her advice was go study Portuguese.
Did that hurt you? Did that make any difference in how you felt?
No, because it was hindsight.
Confidence?
It was hindsight. Because there were 3 of us in Brazil, at the time, and I was the only one who could even attempt much of anything of a report, even though my grammar and my slang was inappropriate. I did better than the other two. So it was only in Rio that it was unacceptable. Where I was in the country, it was perfectly acceptable. So it was just another little aspect of being in a minority situation in another country. And to this day, I have seen, my typical example is coming into Newark, New Jersey at the Newark airport. There was a elderly Chinese couple who wanted to buy something at one of the stands that you have at the airport. And the people behind the counter were very impatient with them because they didn't speak any English. They had trouble with their money. They did have dollars, but they got poor treatment. And I thought, my word, this is not what America is, really. This is not how we need to make immigrants feel welcome. You know, they came here for a purpose. I have no idea what it was, but they were prepared. They had American dollars, and they, didn't know what things were in the case to look at. They were sandwiches and things like that, and they wanted to know what they were, that I gathered from it. But we inadvertently market ourselves poorly as Americans at times. So
has that changed? So the experience that you gained from that particular incident until the day today, do you see that things have changed in America based on?
I do, because there are a lot more immigrants. They have spending power, and merchants that want to have that spending with them do understand, because people participate with their dollars, and they can go to another restaurant that's going to be more accommodating to them. So we adapt, fortunately, and I think we're much more accommodating. I chair a group that the goal is to make North Carolina the most culturally competent state in the United States, because investment here is important. Education of foreign nationals here is significant with our universities, our innovators, our researchers. Many of them have international backgrounds. And so we take pride in the research in the medical area and the technology area that comes here in North Carolina. So what my experience I spoke about was not in North Carolina. But, we're very proud of the achievements of immigrants. Have they win Nobel Peace Prizes, those kinds of things. They get outstanding awards for their research. And so all America, all the world benefits from their contribution, and their opportunity to fulfill their contribution is here in America. And fortunately, a lot of it's here in North Carolina.
Sure. Since we're already talking on that domain on, people moving into North Carolina, becoming the most inclusive state of, among many other states. Now, I'd like to ask you this. A state which has a land area tentatively the same as the country that I come from, Nepal, and has 1/3 of the population of the country where I come from, and people moving in a staggering, rate into the state in the last few years. If we take a look at the data from U.S. Census Bureau from as recent as 2023, there is 1.3%, migration coming into the North Carolina, and some are coming to make their family well, some are coming to establish their business. What is your opinion about opening a small business here, extending it, and what benefit could anybody receive from the state and the Secretary of State, your office?
Well, you've hit the magical question there.
Oh, I did?
Yeah,
awesome.
Because this is the place, we're here at the Secretary of State's office, where business begins. For those people that want to be a corporation or an LLC for their business, or some of those partnerships that have to be filed with us. Right now, every day we are forming between 650 and 700 new businesses. Every day those doors are
Every
open.
single day?
Every single day.
Wow.
Every single day.
And those are done on electronic filing or paper-based filing or both?
It's a combination, and we certainly encourage everybody to do it electronically.
Okay.
Because that makes things move a lot faster. And depending upon the post office, yeah. There are all kinds of issues that can come with that. We strongly encourage electronic filing. Since the beginning of the pandemic, North Carolinians really got into an era of entrepreneurship. In the year prior to the pandemic, we did about 127,000 and change new businesses. The first full year into the pandemic, we did 178,000 and change, a 50,000 increase in one single year. And wow, what's going on? Well, it's people that wanted to get side jobs that they wanted to do as a corporation, or mostly LLCs. Mm-hmm. We found that a lot of the people forming these new corporations, because we've surveyed them, we have 4,000 people that responded to our survey because we wanted to know more about this explosion of business, and we wanted to know how we can help them survive, because our historical rates are that in 3 years we lose 25% of the new businesses, and we lose half by 7 years. So those odds are not very good. Now, there's some that probably never should have been formed. I don't know how to divide those out. But what we found out, and this is a national phenomenon, that a lot of them were women and minorities. And in the women's case, from anecdotal and from surveys with national news, a lot of women were very frustrated about childcare during the pandemic. They didn't know if school was going to be open. They didn't know if the daycare center was going to be open. And of course, a lot of women have elder care also involved. So a lot of them decided to take matters in their own hands, and maybe they negotiated an opportunity with their current employer to become an LLC and be an independent contractor and work from home under their own schedule. Others had maybe a hobby like jewelry or making something or what have you, and decided to turn it into a business. And they were able to study online about marketing and all that kind of stuff and honing their skills, and started a business that way as a secondary source of income. So, and the immigrant story is the same way. When work is unreliable, people do something for themselves, and they try to figure out how to make a business out there. And so there were a lot of people that pivoted in their lives, their professional lives, to support themselves and their family by creating a new business entity.
Sure.
And please remember, if somebody is a sole proprietor, they don't have to register with us. So there's a whole nother world of that out there.
You being a small business owner yourself,
Yes.
What do you think the importance is in women coming up at front in being the entrepreneur, icon of the family? Why do they need to come at front? Why do they need to step into the business? And if there is still more opportunities left for women of North Carolina in coming towards the business domain?
Well, I would say it's not necessarily that they need to. It needs to be that they want to, because an entrepreneur's road is hard. You've got to have it in your gut. A good idea is one thing, but the perseverance and the determination to turn that good idea into something financially rewarding is another challenge. We find that people, unfortunately, do not realize the value of a business plan before they start. The business planning consultants here in the state that are available for free with our community college system, free and confidential, are excellent. I have met with a lot of them. I've seen them at work. A good business plan requires you to think through the what ifs. What if this happens? What if that happens? How are you going to set up your books? How are you going to, what are your reporting obligations? To get people on the right foot when they start. Because unfortunately, that becomes a downfall later on, especially if people want to get financing, because they need to show a profit, and paying out things from your LLC like it's a piggy bank and not a business is a red flag for banks and other lenders. People that try to pay the person that mows their lawn at home, or their child's orthodontist bill, or their wife's hairdresser, those are not business expenses. And when banks see that kind of thing, they worry about where their money is. Is the money truly going to be used for the business? And most importantly, have they shown a profit so that they can pay it back? So people that are trying to avoid taxes through LLCs, they're not going to get a business loan under most circumstances. So, it's a word of caution. And people need to understand that going into it. So when you ask about women stepping up, if they've got a passion for it, because it takes a lot of hard work. That's one of the things that most people starting businesses don't really understand. And if you have employees and you have to make payroll, that even puts more pressure on you. But women make very good business people, detail-oriented, maybe less risk. Their tolerance for risk is not as high as some men because I think they're thinking about the family and everything back here. And, they are, for the most part, determined, follow through, make commitments and statements and hold to them, and turn out to be very good business owners. And they're very good at promoting their products.
They are. My wife is a small business owner, and my niece is going to be a small business owner. She is just ready to file an LLC right now.
Okay, good.
And I completely agree with you that they make the most, patient business owner than the men in many areas. And I truly admire their ability to be
attention
patient.
to detail.
Absolutely.
For a lot of women is very important. And that's very important in your business plan.
Yep.
You just can't skip over certain parts or, just shortchange something. If you've got a solid business plan, you need to stay with it. And, you also have to have alternatives to that if, say, a supplier goes bankrupt or can't supply, or if one of your larger customers all of a sudden doesn't pay. You need to think about those contingencies in advance. And that's what a good business planner helps you with.
Sure. I find, Madam Secretary, yourself to be a very vocal of information sharing, and I particularly remember you from the Notary, sessions. I, being the Notary Public myself, and doing Notary Public, work at my wife's business as well. I see that you are continuously in a conference, answering questions from more than 11,000 Notary Publics in North Carolina.
Oh, no, there are more than 160,000.
160,000?
Yes, sir, 160,000. Our Facebook group has, I think, 11 to 12,000. And we encourage any notaries out there to join our Facebook group. There's over about 165,000 notaries in the state.
Absolutely.
There are almost 7,000 electronic notaries within that group.
Okay, so I'm gonna let everybody know during the middle of this conversation that there is a Facebook page run by Secretary of State Ellen Marshall's office that is completely dedicated to the Notary Public. If you have any questions, I see a lot of questions are being asked, even in the simple terminologies. So that is a great resource, has helped me myself as a notary from the beginning and up to this day. Please join that
And
Facebook
we do
page.
a monthly video newsletter.
Okay.
And we encourage any notaries out there that don't receive that currently to let us know, and we will gladly put you on the address list. Every month we do something seasonal or something funny. They had me shooting basketballs in March for March Madness. We've talked about gardening a little bit. We've talked about cooking a little bit, just that kind of thing. And then we highlight some notaries. And we also have a Fast Five. There are 5 questions based upon the kind of things we see here at the office or questions that come in from us. And we answer them so that people have that knowledge.
Fantastic.
Notary is kind of a zero tolerance activity, so people need to be sure they're absolutely positive about how to do it right. because a notary is an officer of the court, and also these documents that notaries are notarizing frequently are for legal purposes of some sort, transferring a title, a deed, transferring a land, or a contract that may be litigated in court. And that notary seal on there is a mark that, yes, indeed, this person did sign this document, and the notary administered the oath in the presence of the notary. So that gives that document, whatever it might be, an elevated credibility in the legal system.
Sure, sure. Okay, that's incredible. Now let's go back to 1996, where that is something that I always wanted to ask you when you shattered.
It's without a doubt the most fun year of my life. It was a hard year, but it was a very fun year.
But that has paid you off in terms of, a good career in public service, as well as recognition, name, fame, and many accolades in recognitions as well. How did it feel like winning an election back in 1996, and how that has progressed in 7 times that you've been elected? You were the first women elected state official of the state of North Carolina. How did it feel like winning an election back then?
Well, let me tell you about how, and then I'll tell you how I felt about it. North Carolina the Democratic Party had never nominated a woman for a statewide executive office. And so there was a concerted effort. And I had been serving in the state Senate, and so I was a known commodity to Democrats. Now, it wasn't a cakewalk because there were 6 people that got into the primary race, and the runoff laws were different then. So I had the second place, I led, but the second place finisher called for a runoff. And I had a second activity running around the state for 30 days after the primary election. Once I got the nomination, the way that I campaigned for both the nomination and the general election was multifaceted. You have to energize the networks that are available to you. I was a member of the Women Lawyers Association. That was a very good network for me. I had done domestic violence work and helped found a domestic violence center in Harnett County. So the domestic violence network, I had instant credibility with them. I was a successful 4-H'er in Maryland, and I had been a 4-H volunteer here in North Carolina. Again, that was another network that knew me and knew if I was a successful 4-H'er in that program in Maryland, that really transferred here in North Carolina because the program is the same state to state, and that just gave me credibility with people I never met because I had been a 4-H all-star and president of the Maryland 4-H older youth group. So people knew I had achieved in that program. My Senate network was very helpful. That gave me validators in different states, in different counties. So it was important. My opponent was Richard Petty, and he was a race car personality. And I had to be very careful in not saying anything that would be perceived negative by his race fans. Press on the campaign trail will try to bait you into saying somebody's totally unqualified and what have you. He was qualified because to be Secretary of State, you have to be a certain age and you have to be a resident of North Carolina a certain amount of time. Now, his skills and training were not the skills and training that I had because this is like running a law firm, a large law firm. And so what I would tell people was, if you wanted to talk about notary law and corporation formation, you talk to me. If you wanted to talk about NASCAR standings and restrictor plates, you talk to Mr. Petty. And if you wanted brain surgery, you wouldn't come to either one of us. You got to go with the field that the person is trained in. And so that was how I messaged. And with Mr. Petty's notoriety, the press, not just from North Carolina, but from all over the country and even foreign press, came to observe this race. They rode around with me for a week, some of them, or they would follow around to different campaign events and get interviews with me because it was such a a noteworthy race because he was known so well everywhere. It was a household name at the time. But the public believed that I was the right person for the job. I think it had to do with skills and ability. And races should not be solely personality contests anyway. You need to be skilled in what you're doing for the public. So that's how I won that race. Now, breaking the glass ceiling for women was an awesome accomplishment. I'm actually, when they do Women's History Month, I'm noted at the History Museum, those kinds of things. But I felt the weight of a lot of women on my shoulders that were hoping that I would open doors for them. And I know that I did. There have been other women in the past who have gotten a high-level profile and then have messed up, is the phrase we use here in North Carolina. And that hurts women. When you have so few examples to go by, when one is inadequate or fails in some way, that does diminish the opportunity for others.
It does.
So I firmly believe that success of a woman in government helps women in business. And success of women in business helps women in government, because when we see women who are capable, can be leaders, can be dynamic, can run multi-million-dollar organizations, that a rising tide lifts a lot of boats. So I do believe, I know what I've done, because people have come and told me that I've inspired them to do this or inspired them to do that, or inspired them to not let their license to do a certain profession expire just to keep it as an insurance policy, especially those looking at domestic issues. You know, they've come and told me, and they've brought their daughters and granddaughters to meet me as someone who opened doors for them. So that's about as humbling as it can be.
I am a great admirer of your open door policy. You know, I had the opportunity to take a photograph of you and your husband. You know, we remember him in our prayer. And you just said yes when we said, okay, Madam Secretary, can we come over, and then hand a photograph over to you? Just I happened to take it at one of the Nepalese community event, and you gladly said yes, and I'm glad that I asked for it, and I'm very fortunate that you said yes, because that is the only time that I met your husband, and after a few months, you know, he's with God. That is something that I admire a lot about you, and you have continued inspiring all other women to be that way.
My mother was the kind of person that if she thought I was getting a big head, which means overinflated ego, she would let me know. She was a very humble lady, a very hardworking lady, a church organist and a music teacher at the home. And I tell people that there is an occupation called farmer's wife, which, you know, my mother was. And so she kept me in line in my growing up years as best she could, about not feeling too big about anything at all, and tried to keep me grounded. And I think of her often and hope that I've fulfilled what she would want for me. And I know I have, so.
Absolutely. You are inspiring, you are disseminating that legacy to, I would say, hundreds of thousands of women, and especially because I represent an immigrant community, immigrant family. I live with my parents and with my family and we all look towards someone who has been a source of inspiration to many people, and we look towards you, Madam Secretary.
Thank you.
Has this been, because the way you talk and the way you have this conversation, it feels like you're doing it so easily, but it may not have been such an easy task to be in an office for the last 7 times, and since 1996, and today is 2024. Has there been any incident, any occurrences, anything that you think that, okay, oh my God, I can't take it anymore?
Not now. In the beginning, the agency was in turmoil. The morale was low. We didn't get things done very well at all. We couldn't answer telephones. the agency had been neglected for a while, and then there was a bad negative audit report done by the state auditor that showed that people were not doing what they took an oath to do. Right. And that person left office early, and then there was an interim, and when I came in, the morale was terrible. So I knew I had to get the ox out of the ditch, which is an old saying. I didn't make any public speeches for the first 2 years, really, because I couldn't answer the question, when's the problem going to be fixed? You know, we were months, over 113 days behind filing bank loan papers, which are very simple to file. And banks were saying, look, we can lend money anywhere in the country. We don't have to lend it here in North Carolina. And if you can't do the paperwork, you know, and bank officers, they can't have open loan files on their desk for months on end, because when the auditors come around and review them and their job performance is on the line, it's like they have failed. They haven't gotten this loan, they haven't completely closed out all the legal part of the loan. And so I just stayed in the office from about the time the sun came up till way after the sun went down, to get the assets, to develop a new technology system, because I knew the General Assembly was not going to give us more employees. So there was no solution other than develop a good technology plan. We did get an initial infusion of money to develop that, and it's been a success, I'm pleased to say. And I own the system that we operate on. It is not a commercial vendor's. It is one that we have developed ourselves. And other states used it for a while. We bartered it. You know, I was a hero in the people in my type of work, because when they were in a ditch and their General Assembly would not help them with the money that they needed, we gave it to them, and we had a few requirements. Number one, give North Carolina the credit. Number two, if you add anything onto this architecture, you give it back to us. So that's how we were able to, it was like a force multiplier, be able to do things faster than we could do it just by ourselves. The Notary platform in particular was actually done by the state of Missouri, building on our architecture. And they gave it to us, and bingo. And we had to modify it a little bit for North Carolina, but it wasn't hard. So it wasn't until I got to the point where we were much more up to date did I even show my face out there, because I didn't want people to think I was abandoning the core mission. I was embarrassed that I didn't have answers quickly enough. So, you know, but now that things are much better and have been for a long time. Now, we're facing a time in state government when salaries are not what they need to be, and folks do leave. Unfortunately, they may like being here as much as any place, but if they can get a significant salary raise somewhere else, they're gone. They're bye-bye, you know. So, but it's the technology evolution of the office has been something that I've been very, very pleased with.
Absolutely.
And technology, when people ask me what is my number one worry, it's cybersecurity. That'll never change from number one. That's got to be. We have over 500,000 things looked at every day on our website. This year, we talked earlier about electronic filings versus paper filings. This year, we had 550,000 paper documents filed with us. Yeah, and every document that we file has to have eyes on to make sure that it's complete, accurate, and compatible with what previously was filed here. So,
has the technology helped you?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. When this great escalation of the new era of entrepreneurship, when we had that 50,000 increase in 1 year, we'd have been smothered in paper had we not had smothered in filings, had we not had a technological solution. We developed some wizards here, and we've gotten, in 2022, we've gotten national and international awards for using that type of application for government filing. It's where people almost can't make a mistake. They can't attempt to use a name that's already taken. They can't go forward if the Postal Service doesn't recognize the address they've put in as a mailing address to be a valid mailing address. Those kind of things. Just like on your credit card, if you put the wrong numbers in your zip code or not enough numbers, it'll put a red box around it and say it won't let you go any further. that's the kind of thing that we adopted here in 2020, early 2021, somewhere in there. Saved us. And it eliminates choke points. All the errors that people tender to us, we can fix a few, but not very many, and the rest of them, then we've got to send back, communicate to somebody to fix it, and blah, 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 and, it's a choke point.
Talking about technology, since we're already talking this, and I'm glad that you have a great admiration to the developing technology, and I have something fun to do with on this conversation.
Okay.
I have planned. I don't know if that goes well or not. What do you think about AI?
Well, AI is the new frontier. The state is developing some protocols and standards for us, and sooner rather than later, I hope that they will produce those. AI, is a tool, and like any tool, can be misused, and so we've got to be very serious about identifying when AI has been the content creator or those kinds of things. So I'm cautiously watching what other states are doing, what the federal government is doing. It's coming, and
Sure.
you've got to be prepared.
Yep. You got to be prepared.
Not it's coming; it's here.
It is already here, and I would like to show you an example. I don't know if the network would give this opportunity. What I was thinking while driving here, and that I should ask the AI, what question should I ask Elaine Marshall?
Okay.
And I had practiced it, a couple times while driving, but I don't know if this works now. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. It's opening up. I am podcasting the Secretary of State in North Carolina, Elaine Marshall. What questions should I ask her first?
You could start with, Secretary Marshall, what initially inspired you to pursue a career in public service? And how has your journey shaped your perspective on leadership? This sets a personal tone and allows her to share her story. Then you might ask, what accomplishments during your tenure as Secretary of State are you most proud of? This gives her an opportunity to highlight her key achievements. Another good question could be, how has your approach to modernizing the Secretary of State's office impacted businesses and citizens in North Carolina? This can lead to a discussion on her initiatives and their benefits.
Well, it's spot on, really. Spot on.
That is great. I'm glad that we talked about many of those things.
Right, yeah.
She suggested, but that's fine. That's fine. So we got a glimpse of what AI could do, and this is the simplest form of AI. You, as a great proponent of technology in the office, and have implemented electronic filing, and I'm sure you have protected the website and the systems through countless cyber attacks through innovative technology. Do you see any reason that we need to be cautious of what new technology brings? When what we see as a benefit like this, could that be changed into something like a curse? What's your opinion on it?
Well, it's the typical two-edged sword. It can be used for good, it can be used for evil. The efficiencies that it can give us are amazing. Now, if folks rely upon that as the gospel and don't do their own research, there have been cases of lawyers who have cited cases to judges that didn't exist. So AI really messed up on those occasions. And if you're a professional and you are representing this, not just to be your own work, but representing this to be the law and why a judge should rule a certain way, that's very, very dangerous. You're creating an advantage that is not there for you. Right. I'm concerned about bias that may be in whatever all the stuff is that's in there for it to digest. How that's going to play out. How different cultures are going to be respected in the AI system. We know that there are cultural faux pas and misunderstandings in the world all the time, and some of them can lead to serious world disruption. It certainly is disruptive to relationships between people, because different cultures have different expectations, even they're using some of the same words. So how does that fit into AI?
That is yet to come, and then we still have to wait for the technology to play out, or take a measure to cut down on
and then there's
improper uses of it.
The bare-face effort to mislead, misidentification in the political arena, misrepresent. All of that scares me a lot.
Sure. Madam Secretary, I don't have any other questions left apart from a simple question of, are you planning to run for the office again?
Not only planning, I filed back in December.
You did already.
And I had no primary opposition.
Fantastic.
I was hoping that would happen. And I do have, there was a Republican primary, and I do have an opponent as a result of that primary for the November election.
Okay. I'm not into politics, and I don't understand politics a lot. So if I'm asking an improper question, I'd like to apologize, during this conversation. The other thing that I wanted to ask you, Madam Secretary, is the entire wisdom, experiences, information, knowledge that you've gained in your life, being a source of inspiration to many, many, many people. How do you plan to disseminate that information? How do you plan to transfer that legacy over to the new generation? Are you writing a book? Are you planning to do a documentary? Are you planning to just, have monologues?
Well,
do you have anything as such?
I have a whole body of work that is available out there in the public domain. I have no idea the number of speeches I've given on various topics, and a lot of them are on women's leadership and women in business and business in general. I can tell you this, that I'm donating my papers to Meredith Women's College here in Raleigh. They have a distinguished woman's collection there. And so that will be the depository for researchers to evaluate my spoken word and some other words that have been written by others about me through newspaper clippings or awards I've received. When I think about it, a country girl from Maryland, and I'm sitting here talking to a leader of an ethnic community in North Carolina that we value very much. And I have 4 honorary doctorate degrees, including one from a university in Moldova, the Republic of Moldova, where we have a partnership. I almost don't believe it myself. I don't understand. I mean, I know it's happened, and I never had a vision that those were not objectives. Those were things that happened along the way. And maybe that's the key to my success. I've never, other than winning elections, that's been the objective, because you can't do this other stuff if you don't win. But I didn't campaign on being the first woman elected in this state, because that is not a solid enough platform. That is something that's on the side. The platform needs to be, I'm capable, I'm going to do A, B, C, and here's how I'm going to do it to change the office and serve people in general. People are not going to vote for somebody to be the first woman elected dog catcher or whatever. It's a novelty thing. You got to have substance. And I've tried to stick with that substance all the way through, and these other things have happened. People have observed, and these other things have happened. I've several national awards. I've been president of 2 national organizations in my time. When I was a college student, I never thought that would be anything I ever dreamed of. I often tell folks that I never had as many role models as folks have now. When I was in high school, I never saw an elected woman come in and talk about elected office or running something. I certainly never saw a female lawyer in my classroom or whenever we had vocational days, that kind of thing. So we can tell people that you can be anything you want to be, and that is true. But it's reinforced by seeing somebody that looks like you or has a background like you do that has achieved that. And then that validates the fact that that child, that other person, yes, they can be that. There is a pathway. Somebody took that pathway and the results turned out very well. So, it's exciting in these times. And so I hope the next generations coming along will do better than I did. I hope they will find some inspiration, but I hope they'll think of ways to do things differently, to do it better for their generation, for their times. Maybe using my experience as a baseboard to go by, but then putting their own touch on it, putting their own abilities for the times, the moments that they're in.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to listen to you all day because you have so much positivity, so much progression to share. And I myself feel energized when I listen to you, be it electronically or be it in person. And again, I'd like to, admire you. I'd like to thank you a million times for your,
Well, you're certainly welcome. And the answer to your last question about others, you're making that happen with this podcast. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My last question, Madam Secretary, if you don't have anything other to share, if you were on the opposite side of this conversation, meaning that you were asking a question, what would be the ultimate question you'd ask to the Secretary of State, Ellen Marshall?
What is my next big goal?
And what would be the answer to that?
My next big goal would be to have stronger economic development for small businesses in rural counties. And I'm already working on that. We have almost a non-existent entrepreneurial ecosystem in the rural areas. And one of the greatest tragedies that I guess I put on my own family, but happened to me, is when a young person does get some education and comes back and says to mom and dad, I can't come back home because I can't earn a living in this community. Even if it's a community that love dearly and want to walk in the same pathway, fishing in the same streams that they did as a kid. They just can't do it. And we need to make sure that people in North Carolina are not second-class citizens because of where they live, and that economic opportunity is more widespread. And small business enterprise is the way that that's going to happen. We're lucky once in a while to have large enterprises go in and employ people, but they can come and go. And if we can have some solid local economic development, entrepreneurship, broadband is going to be a big key to that also. It's an impediment right now. But we will hopefully stop the divide between rural and urban, and then close that gap. That includes good education, which is something I cannot control, but I'm constantly talking about a qualified workforce and what our young people need as opportunities from education, a free and fair education from a public school in all of these places. And so that requires more investment in education and treating teachers with the respect that they well earn every day. So that would be that's my goal going forward.
Thank you so much, Madam Secretary, for your time again, for your willingness to share this information, be in this, and inviting us to your office. And I feel lucky, I feel honored to be in a conversation with.
Well, it's been an honor for me, so thank you very, very much. Glad to have you. Thank you.